start off today's session, I'd like to thank the funders of Cochrane Canada. CIHR provides the funding for the work that we do around systematic reviews with the Cochrane collaboration. So thank you very much to CIHR and the institutes listed there for their support. The license for the software that we're using today has kindly been provided by the Pan American Health Organization, or PAHO. I would like to thank them for allowing us to conduct these webinars at no cost to us. Thank you to Louis Gabriel and his colleagues. So today's session is on priority setting for Cochrane review groups, tips, tricks, and case studies. We're going to be hearing from a number of different presenters, giving some examples of how they've done priority setting in their different groups, and giving you some suggestions for how you can do priority setting with your own teams. So today's presenters, we have Claire Jess and Gail Quinn, Mona Nasser and Sally Crowe, Tianjing Li, and Emma Welsh. I'd like to give a quick introduction so that you know who you're talking with today. Gail's been Joint Managing Editor for the Cochrane Gynecological Cancer Review Group for the past 7 years. She's based in Bath, UK. Claire's another Managing Editor for the Cancer Group and shares the role with Gail. She's also been working for the team for 7 years. She started her career as a bench scientist before moving on to academic research. Emma Welsh is a Managing Editor of the Cochrane Airways Group. Originally, she trained as an organic chemist, but decided that the lab wasn't really for her. So she's been working as a systematic reviewer, including reviews on asthma and COPD, before taking on her current role in 2010. Mona Nasser has been working for the Peninsula Dental School as a clinical lecturer in evidence-based dentistry. Before joining that, she had been with ICWIC, the German equivalent of the National Institute for Clinical Excellence in the UK. Her background's actually in dentistry, and she's from Iran originally. She's the current author representative on the steering group of the Cochrane collaboration. Mona's one of the co-conveners and actually was the original starter and founder of the Cochrane Priority Setting and Agenda Setting Methods Group. Sally Crowe, who's joining us today, has a nursing and public health background. She's the director of Crowe Associates Limited, which provides consultancy, training, and project management for patient and public involvement in health. She's recently published a BMJ Wiley-Blackwell Patient and Public Involvement Toolkit. Teaching critical appraisal and understanding evidence skills continues to be a passion for her. She chairs the James Lind Alliance Monitoring and Implementation Group, a coalition that aims to tackle treatment uncertainties in healthcare. Tianjing Li is faculty in the Department of Epidemiology at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Her background is as a physician, and she has a PhD degree in epidemiology and master's in biostatistics. Her core research interests comprise the methodology of setting priorities for comparative effectiveness research. So thank you very much to our presenters today. We're delighted to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. I'm going to turn it over to Mona, who's going to start off today's session. Mona.
Thanks a lot, Erin, for introducing everybody. Can I get a happy face from everybody who hears me clearly? Oh, okay, sounds good. And my sound's good. It looks like my sound is good. We had 4 webinars in this month in February, and they were organized by the Cochrane Agenda and Priority Setting Methods groups, and in an attempt to communicate what is happening about priority setting in the Cochrane collaboration. Today's session is the last webinar, and the objective is to give you some case studies of priority setting in the Cochrane review group, so that you can have a comparison about what is the advantages and disadvantages of each approach. And we would, during the session, we would also ask you to share your experience and views about priority setting and selecting topics for Cochrane reviews with us. I start with some very basic issues about priority setting. One of our favorite quotes that we use in the Cochrane methods groups is that that in a collaboration we all look about bias in primary studies, but sometimes we might look back and see that the bias actually is not in the answer but in the question itself. And it might be sometimes the bias might be in the research agenda itself, and that's the reason, that's the problem that we are trying to address with developing a more systematic approach to select and prioritize topics for research and for Cochrane reviews. So the question is, what is actually research priority setting? Research priority setting is a part of a bigger research cycle. It is a way to identify the stakeholders who are important to us, to understand the context, to harvest and identify questions that the people have, prioritize them, and then disseminate these results and try to implement and get the research questions done and evaluate and provide opportunity for appealing these results. So there is a lot of categorization in research priority setting, but we use a very general categorization, and this is priority setting can be very technical, using quantitative approaches, using economic approaches. It could be interpretive, involving different stakeholders, and it can be a mixed method, using both of them. So you would see a range of different types of priority setting today, which have certain degrees of interpretive approaches, a certain degree of technical approaches. So before we start the session, can I ask everybody to give a happy face if you use a certain priority setting process for your research or for selecting topics for Cochrane reviews? Oh, there's not a lot of them, and oh yeah, there are a few of them coming up. So, and you could use the chat room to send us, if you have during the presentations or now, if you have a certain research priority setting process, you could share it with all of us. I give you a moment if you would like to share your ideas with us. Sally is writing something. And yeah. So you have to. Nothing came through from the chat room. So you have the opportunities through. Oh, one group uses the MDGs. Yeah, one of the groups uses the Millennium Development Goals. That's what I guess it's the infectious diseases survey groups who does that. I would hand over now to Tianjing to give her presentation. But feel free if you have different approaches to prioritize topics that to share with us through the chat room. Over to you, Tianjing.
Thank you very much, Mona. How is everybody doing this morning? So I am going to talk to you about a project that was conducted by the Cochrane Eyes and Vision Group. I will describe the project briefly and then focus on the impact, accountability, and sustainability of the project. Okay? Back in 2007, the steering group of the Cochrane collaboration has set aside funding to fund projects that aimed to test different methods for prioritization setting for Cochrane systematic reviews. And 5 groups got the funding, and we're one of them, led by Dr. Kate Dickerson, the Cochrane Eyes and Vision Group. As you can see here, each group of the funded project used different approaches for priority setting. For example, the way we did it was we used practice guidelines as a starting point to determine review priorities. There are other groups who involve patient-professional partnership and collaboration between review groups and field, and using knowledge due gap or and have projects focusing on the low and middle income countries as well. So for today, we're going to talk about the experience from our group using practice guidelines to determine the review priorities. I said I would describe the project briefly and then summarize the research activities, professional collaborations, funding, and educational opportunities, as well as describe the impact of the project. Where do we start when we start thinking about prioritization? Well, in general, there are 2 approaches, the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. So for example, in the United States, the Institute of Medicine has said 100 national priorities for comparative effectiveness research. And the way they did it was they solicit nominations and set priorities based on condition level and priority level topic criteria. For example, the condition level criteria could be the burden of disease, the cost, the variability in the usage of an intervention, and the priority topic level criteria could be whether there are existing evidence and what is the evidence gap, whether they can afford doing research in that area. And this approach has been used by the Institute of Medicine, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and both are in the US, and I'm sure there are international organizations using similar approach. On the other hand, there could be investigator-initiated research, which is a bottom-up approach. For example, the Cochrane collaboration supporting the largest number of systematic reviews. Most of the reviews were initiated by researchers interested in a topic-specific area. And also this applies to people seeking for federal funding, and those are examples of investigator-initiated research. Our approach, using a combination of practice guidelines and systematic reviews, has the following 3 steps. So the first, in step 1, we want to address the question, what are the important clinical questions and in what priority should they be answered? In order to get a list of important clinical questions, we use practice guidelines. So if you think of the practice guidelines, they're usually developed by professional societies with inputs from clinicians, opinion leaders, and methodologists. So the practice guidelines include recommendations for diagnosing and treating patients. And you can think of those as answers to a clinical problem. And we took those answers to clinical problem and restated them into answerable clinical question using PAHO format, the patient population intervention, comparison intervention outcome. And then we prioritize the clinical question using a Delphi survey approach. So in that way, we got a list of clinical questions where the clinicians want answer to. And in step 2, we want to know, have the questions being addressed already? And what is the quality of currently available evidence? To do that, we have to search for and identify existing systematic reviews, not only in Cochrane review, but also the non-Cochrane reviews. And then we assess the validity of the existing systematic reviews. By doing step 1 and step 2, we are able to address what are the information gaps and what research is needed in what priority. So we mapped the systematic reviews with the prioritized research questions. We interpret the findings from reliable systematic reviews and proposed a research agenda for future reviews as well as for new trials. So why use practice guidelines to set priorities? Well, we said the clinical practice guidelines are generally developed by professional society, and guidelines reflect the state of knowledge in the clinical community regarding prevention, screening, and therapy, as well as the community's interpretation of evidence. So for that reason, the clinical questions derived from them reflect key issues and dilemma facing clinicians at the time of guideline development. And ideally, the practice guidelines should be informed by the best evidence from scientifically based systematic research. So for this reason, we choose practice guidelines as a starting point. So the way we did it was we went to the clinical practice guidelines and translated them into clinical questions. So for example, the American Academy of Ophthalmology has guidelines put out for management of patients with primary open-angle glaucoma. We took guideline recommendations, which are answers to a clinical problem, and made them into questions. In this way, we derived 45 clinical questions from the guidelines on the management of primary open-angle glaucoma. We took those 45 clinical questions and went to the clinicians. We asked the members of the American Glaucoma Society which questions are most important that you need answers to it. And we did this in 2 rounds of Delphi survey approach. So here are first 2 examples from our list of 45 questions. The font is a little small. I apologize for that. So the first question reads as, Is medical therapy an effective initial treatment in lowering intraocular pressure in patients with primary open-angle glaucoma? So that's the question we derived from a statement that reads like, the medical therapy should be used as an effective initial treatment for patients with this condition. So we got those 45 questions, and we went to the clinicians. We asked them to rank on a scale of 0 to 10 whether they think it's important to have the answer to each of the following clinical questions for providing effective patient care. As you can see, we here have the scale from 0 to 10, with the 10 being most important, and they could also write down comments, or if they don't have any judgment, they could check that box as well. So this is how we did it. Here are the results from the 2 rounds of Delphi survey from clinicians. On the x-axis are the 45 questions grouped by types of intervention. So the first group, the first set of questions, are on medical interventions. In the y-axis are the ratings, the importance ratings, and the larger the number, the more important the questions are. And here we plotted the estimate and the 95% credible intervals for each of the questions. As you can see, a lot of the questions have overlapping confidence intervals, but for those ones that I have a star on top of them, those are the ones differentiate themselves from the rest of the question. So we classified those questions as the most important. Here's just a quick summary of what we did in step 1. We want to know what are the important questions and in what priority should they be answered. We got 45 of those questions from the practice guidelines on primary open-angle glaucoma. We prioritized 9 clinical questions using 2 rounds of Delphi survey of a professional society. While establishing the priorities that lie ahead, we also look at the literature and trying to identify, digest, and assimilate of the existing evidence. And we did a comprehensive literature search for systematic reviews. We identified 39 systematic reviews and classified 13 of them as high quality. So those 39 reviews are Cochrane as well as non-Cochrane reviews. So the above 2 considerations, or the first 2 steps, really work together. They work together side by side, setting priorities for future research and identifying past efforts. Those are the 2 paramount considerations in helping us to identify the remaining information gaps. In order to know what are the information gaps and what research is needed, we mapped the 9 priority questions with the 13 high-quality systematic reviews we identified. And in that way, we found 4 out of the 9 questions had no associated reliable review. And in our opinion, that's good indication for new systematic reviews. And we have 5 questions had at least 1 reliable review, but 2 of them had inconclusive findings. So that's a good place for new clinical trial. And 3 of them had conclusive findings. We suggest continued updates of existing reviews. I just briefly described the steps we took to set priorities. We identified 4 prioritized topics on primary open-angle glaucoma. We posted those 4 questions on our website. We're actively recruiting authors to get those 4 reviews done. We also encourage authors to convert their non-Cochrane reviews into Cochrane reviews. As I mentioned, when we search for reviews, we search for everything. So we knew there are important reviews that the authors could potentially convert them into Cochrane review. We published 3 manuscripts reporting the methods and findings from this priority setting exercise. We presented at multiple venues, including this one. So here's the first paper that we report on the priority setting process, how we got the question, how we surveyed the clinicians. Since we have searched for all eyes and vision systematic reviews, right now we have a registry of systematic reviews in eyes and vision research, and we have done quite a bit of methods work using the data from that registry. We're also expanding our priority setting exercise into new topic areas. So that was the what I have just described is our first study focusing on primary open-angle glaucoma. And we got funding from the National Eye Institute in the United States to expand our the research process, the priority setting process, in 3 new topic areas: primary angle closure glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, and dry eye. So for primary angle closure glaucoma, this is a condition more prevalent in the Asian countries. We did the survey of the Asian glaucoma specialists. And this has also stimulated new research ideas. The database we have has a scoping function for overviews and network meta-analysis. And that goes back to the question of whether having a big review addressing many comparisons versus have smaller reviews, splitting the comparisons into pairwise comparison. Since we have now a list or catalog of all the reviews for a given topic, we can decide whether we could move to the next step, do over reviews and network meta-analysis. And this project also provides a lot of educational opportunities. So 1 doctoral student and 3 master students pursued their thesis projects while working on this, and in their projects, they addressed the lessons learned from the pilot project, which is the project I just described. We have collaborated with many stakeholders in this process, including the local epidemiologists and biostatisticians. We worked with the guideline developers at the American Academy of Ophthalmology, since that's where we got our 45 questions. We work closely with the clinicians and vision research scientists from American Glaucoma Society and Asian Pacific region. We're also trying to involve consumers into the other priority setting exercise we're doing right now. For example, the dry eye project. We're going to work very closely with the consumers. I did not say too much about the quality of those reviews we have identified, but there are a lot of methodological issues with those reviews. And those reviews were published, in ophthalmology journal. We worked with the editors at those journals and let them know here are the problems that we have seen from those existing reviews. And this has led us to take an editorial role at a leading U.S. ophthalmology journal. And we're working, as I mentioned earlier, with the guideline developers. So we're working with them and helping them to update their guidelines, or if they're interested in developing new guidelines, they could certainly partner with us and using the reviews we have identified already. So what do we learn from this research? Our approach shows value for a specialty area. The examples I showed earlier about how the Institute of Medicine and ARC has established their priorities, those are general for a broader topic area. And our approach focuses on all clinical questions on the effectiveness of intervention for a specialty or a subspecialty area. So it is comprehensive and pragmatic, meaning that we can adapt our approach to other specialty areas as well and pretty quickly. And the future application may consider ways to involve a broader range of stakeholders. So, for example, we worked with the clinicians from American Glaucoma Society, but we did not involve consumers for the priority setting exercise on the primary open-angle glaucoma, but we're going to do that for dry eye project. And we include new interventions, and new clinical questions could be included after we extract the clinical questions from the practice guidelines. So in our opinion, this is a high-yield investment for the collaboration. The project was funded by the Cochrane Prioritization Fund and is timely relevant to the ongoing U.S. healthcare reform. So in conclusion, our framework offers a robust component for the prioritizing systematic reviews to the existing approaches that people have been using. The long-term impact of prioritization still needs to be determined. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, for example, is the prioritized review going to be incorporated into practice guidelines more quickly? Will people use the review findings more often than those non-priority reviews. We have demonstrated accountability to the collaboration and sustainability of the framework, and the experience gained from the prioritization initiative could guide future research efforts across the collaboration. All right. Is there any question? Okay, I saw one question, and I'm going to hand it over to...
Thank you so much, Tianjing. This is Erin using from the Canadian Cochrane Centre. I had a question about the priority setting processes that you did, in that I was wondering whether you had conducted any formal evaluations of what worked well or what didn't work well, excuse me, or if you might incorporate some sort of evaluation if you do decide to expand your priority setting.
Thank you for your question. So the question is whether we have done some formal comparison of how our approach is compared to other approaches and what worked well and what didn't work so well. Since the project I described is the first one we have done so far, what we learned from there is clinicians, for example, one of the lessons was clinicians may not think in the setting of priority. So when you ask them to rank the importance of having answers to the questions, basically a ranked order of priority questions, they did not quite get it. So they will tell you whether the intervention is effective or not. So they will answer the question rather than tell you a ranked order in terms of priority. And we have learned that. So in the second project that we did add, for example, knowledge assessment questions before people get into the survey, making sure that they understand the context of the research we're working on. So we have addressed, some of the issues that came up from the first study. And I think since we have 3 studies going on right now on different topic area, we can do a more formal comparison there. Any other question I can help to answer? Another question I saw in the chat box is how much time and resources did you need to do this priority setting exercise? Is it doable, meaning that the CRG are already doing, or what you need extra funding and staff? We did report the time, the personnel involvement and the resources needed for completing this project in the 3rd publication, which will be in press in Annals of Internal Medicine on March the 6th. So we do have a time estimate and what type of people you need to complete the to complete the exercise. Is it doable, meaning what the CRGs are already doing? So we are doing as part of the Cochrane Eyes and Vision Group, and we did have funding from the National Eye Institute for the 3 ongoing projects. So that's what I have to answer that question. So I think we do need extra funding. Is there any other question? Okay, I'm going to hand it over to...
Thanks, Tianjing. I see that Sally Crowe has written in your experience, do groups that produce practice guidelines involve consumers in the development of guidance? So I wonder if you could answer Sally.
All right. So the question is, in your experience, do groups that produce practice guidelines involve consumers in the development of guidelines? For the guideline developers we have worked with, the process of involving consumers, I don't think it's formalized or there's a procedure to follow. But I think the Institute of Medicine has recently published a guidance document on how to produce practice guidelines and how to incorporate systematic reviews into practice guidelines. And there they have sections related to how to formally involve the consumers. So the current status of involving consumers may not be that formal. I mean, that's my, by working with this one group that I have worked with. Is there any other question?
Hi, I see that Charlotte has written in, how often do you envision that you will need to do this kind of priority setting for a given topic?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? You mean how much time, or?
The question is how often you would need to do it. So how often would you need to repeat this sort of exercise for a given topic?
I have to think about that harder before I say anything. I think it is time consuming. We did the first project like in a year or so, and I think for the 3 ongoing projects, it probably will take us shorter. And with the time and efforts you have to, contribute to this type of projects, I have to think about how often that we can do this repeatedly.
Well, thank you so much, Tianjing. Can I ask everybody to send a quick round of applause to say thank you so much for that presentation? We're going to turn the microphone over to keep things going to Gail Quinn and Claire Jess from the Gynecological Cancer Review Group. Gail, Claire?
Yep. Thank you for inviting us to participate in today's webinar. Firstly, I'm just going to give you a brief summary of the editorial team assembled for the project. I'm Gail Quinn, and along with Claire Jess, who's with me here today in Bath, we are the managing editors. Based at Newcastle University is Andy Bryant, one of our group methodologists. Jane Hayes, our information manager, is also based in Bath, along with Tracy Bishop, our assistant managing editor. And Joe Morrison, who is the coordinating editor for the group, is based in Taunton and has provided us with the author's perspective for this presentation. So let me begin by giving you some background. At the end of 2006, the National Institute of Health Research, who fund all of the UK Cochrane groups, approached the UK Cochrane Centre to help set up a grant scheme to which all UK groups could apply for funding a specific programme of reviews. Our then coordinating editor, Chris Williams, was very keen for us to do this, and we very quickly put together a team of interested parties, including gynaecologists, both surgeons and nurses, medical oncologists, Cochrane methodologists, and patient representatives. After many hours of teleconferencing, face-to-face meetings, and hundreds of emails, it was agreed an application which aimed to produce 20 new reviews and 20 review updates on top of the group's normal output would be submitted. We would achieve this by using the funds to employ staff dedicated to the programme who would provide personalised, hands-on training and support to the author teams throughout the review process. In May 2007, we heard that we had been one of the successful applicants. At this point, we started the recruitment process, which led to the appointments of Andy Bryant to work with our then senior statistician Heather Dickinson and Jane Hayes. At the same time, we started a massive prioritisation project. This involved contacting all senior UK gynae-oncologists, as well as all the groups listed here, to ask them for their top 5 priority topics for new Cochrane reviews in gynecological cancer. We did give them some guidance regarding criteria for the questions important to the gynecological cancer community, with the fundamental aim to ensure direct benefits for patient care. We received a huge number of suggestions, which once we had excluded overlap to existing Cochrane reviews, gave us a wish list, which we took to a prioritisation meeting at the King's Fund in London in September 2007. This meeting was attended by 20 invited participants, including the stakeholders. After a few exhaustive and often entertaining hours, a final hit list of 20 new prioritised titles was agreed. We presented a special session at the British Gynecological Cancer Society meeting in Belfast in November 2007, inviting prospective author teams to contact us should they wish to undertake one of the prioritised reviews. We then worked with the stakeholders to allocate the titles to author teams, which ideally included at least one author with previous Cochrane experience supporting their own subspecialty trainees. One of our criteria was to ensure that the gynae-oncology community would then have a large pool of Cochrane-trained experts who would be able to disseminate the results of reviews via national bodies and therefore influence local and national guidelines. All the titles were snapped up by early 2008. Very early on in the application process, we decided as a team to use some of the funds from the programme grant to offer full-time methodological statistical support to our authors. This methodological support, as well as help with devising and running search strategies, was recognised as the two most beneficial areas to the review authors throughout the review process. We therefore recruited a research associate, Andy Bryant, who was trained by our then senior statistician Heather Dickinson on Cochrane methodology and statistics. The author teams were assigned Andy when the titles were first registered, and he effectively ran a hands-on roadshow visiting the teams in their hospitals and institutions around the UK to deliver the training. This meant that when the protocols and reviews were submitted to us for peer review, they were at a very advanced stage in the publication process. The training focused on writing the protocol, establishing the inclusion criteria, primary and secondary outcomes, adverse events, risk of bias, and the statistical methods. This was then continued at review stage with help offered at data abstraction, writing the review, data analysis, as well as full support for the summary of findings tables. Andy trained around 50 gynae-oncologists, subspecialty trainees and gynae-oncology nurses, and was on hand for additional training if problems arose. This process has enabled a protocol template to be developed to address the most common features of reviews of treatments to prolong survival in gynecological cancer. This has been used as a basis for the first draft of a protocol for the reviews. One further protocol is being developed for a review of diagnostic test accuracy. Likewise, a data abstraction template has been developed for reviews of treatments to prolong survival. We now come to the other area of support we focused on for the authors. Jane's role as trial search coordinator on the project was to support authors throughout the search process. Prior to her appointment, most authors had conducted literature searches themselves, so this was effectively a new service that was being offered aimed at streamlining this part of the review process. The first step was to liaise with the authors to define search terms that would adequately reflect the inclusion criteria of each review, which was then used to devise the Medline search strategy. Once the protocol had been peer-reviewed and published, the search was run on Medline and then adapted for Embase and central databases. A search was also conducted of the group's specialist register. For update titles included on the programme grant list, it was a question of revisiting the original search strategies, revising them if necessary, and conducting a round of update searches. Feedback from the authors regarding the TSC support they received has been very positive, and consequently this service is now offered routinely to all authors at title registration. And now a quick look at the author's perspective. Joe Morrison had previously undertaken a review before the programme grant. The then TSC assisted with the search strategy development, and the managing editor had helped run the search, which was found to be very time-consuming. There were also difficulties transferring the citations to EndNote. Other areas, which as an author she found daunting, was sifting the search results, data collection and analysis. The main benefits felt by Joe and all our programme grant authors was the enormous difference the hands-on approach made regarding the methodological and TSC support. With the programme grant assistance, Joe completed 4 reviews in 3 years. The outcome of all this hard work is the publication on the Cochrane Library of 40 new reviews and updates. The British Gynecological Cancer Society and Network Site-Specific Group, along with others, are in the process of examining the evidence to update guidelines and patient treatment protocols to achieve our aim of directly benefiting patient care. Another important development to the group is that we now offer the full TSC service to all our author teams. Significantly, we now have the major gynae-oncology centres flying the Cochrane flag and occasionally fighting for new reviews. The group is also delighted to be the recipients of a second round of NIHR programme grant funding as of March this year. And finally, at times during the process we felt like this, but overall it has been a very positive and productive experience for the group, and we are all still on friendly terms. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Gail, and thank you also for your input, Claire. I see that there's a question that Sally's written in the room asking, how did you achieve consensus on your 20 review titles? Gail, I wonder if you could answer Sally. I'm sorry, unfortunately there seems to be a bit of a difficulty with Gail's microphone at the moment. We'll just give Gail a moment to type in her answer perhaps into the chat room. So Gail, if you could send a message to everybody who's in the room today, how did you achieve consensus on your 20 review titles? Thanks very much.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm Claire, Gail's colleague. We achieved the consensus at our prioritisation meeting at the King's Fund in London by all the preliminary ideas that had been given, dividing those up with our sort of invited participants, which included clinicians and patient representatives and other organisations, to sort of appraise the provisional titles have been given, which was say 70 plus, and dividing those up into definite projects, maybe projects, and no projects. So the priority wasn't high enough at this time.
Thank you very much, Claire. There's another question that Charlotte has written in the room. What is your approach for the second program grant? Are you doing anything similar again for the next 20 to 40 reviews? Wonder if you could answer Charlotte.
Our second program grant is not quite so ambitious, mainly because the funding has not allowed that. But this time we have tried to pick up on some of the topics that were missed out on the first time. But we have also done the prioritisation by inviting interested parties to give us their ideas for projects and assessing them. We didn't have a meeting to assess them, but we did a very similar voting system. I can't believe it tells me now.
Thank you very much. So can I get a round of applause, please? Thank you to Gail and to Claire for their presentation today. Thank you so much for sharing that information. We're going to turn it over to our last speaker for the day. This is Emma Welsh. Emma, over to you.
Thank you very much, Erin, and thank you, Mona and Sally, for inviting me to talk to you today. Oh, I need to move the slide on, so just do that. The first two excellent talks presented some quite developed prioritisation methods, but here at the Cochrane Airways Group, we're slightly earlier stages than those two projects, and we're trying to move our the approach that we're taking towards prioritising new reviews and updates towards a more evidence-based and prioritised approach to decide where to spend our valuable sources, both money and time. So I wanted to do a quick poll with you all today, just to find out how many of you are taking your first steps in prioritising your work, be it Cochrane reviews or something else. So if you'd like to make a little green check mark to indicate if you're sort of taking your first baby steps, because I know a few of you said that you've actually done a complete sort of exercise video. So that's great. We've got quite a few little green ticks coming in. So that's actually brilliant. So congratulations to everyone, and you know, you're sharing these sort of scary moments with me, and so that's great. So today I wanted to explain where we started from, where we are now, and where we're planning to go to. So in 2011, the Cochrane Airways Group decided to take a more proactive approach to prioritising review topics, both for new and for updated systematic review titles. And we wanted to revisit some earlier work done with the Asthma Working Partnership in 2006. So what happened in 2006? Well, Asthma UK, the British Thoracic Society, formed a working partnership in collaboration with the Cochrane Airways Group, which was facilitated by the James Lind Alliance. 250 clinical research questions were identified from people affected by asthma. That's either people with asthma, parents or carers of people with asthma, or clinicians treating people with asthma. And these questions, approximately 250, are available on the Duet's website. These questions were then categorised, and they were categorised into sort of uncertainties, and the uncertainties were ranked in a face-to-face prioritisation exercise. The ranking produced a list of the top 10 uncertainties in the face-to-face exercise, and you can see here are the top 10 research questions. Having a look at these questions, you'll see that some are suitable for systematic reviews and some need some work. Some could be broken down into a series of systematic reviews. For example, number 6, what is the role of complementary therapies, could be summarised and could be split down into a number of review questions. For example, acupuncture for asthma, breathing exercises. Well, that's not really a complementary therapy. I'm trying to think of another one, sort of chiropractic, that kind of thing. And those individual reviews could then be reviewed in an overall systematic review, an overview. So here is a reference for that publication that resulted from that work. So in the summer of 2011, we decided to revisit those uncertainties to aid prioritisation of our work in the Airways Group, which, like a lot of other Cochrane review groups, has been somewhat haphazard. So in the summer 2011, the Cochrane Airways Group had a meeting with Sally Crowe, who's on the call today, for the James Lind Alliance, and Mark Benton, who's also the James Lind Alliance and works together with NICE. And with Sally and Mark, we discussed the possibility of starting up the project again. We discussed many issues in prioritisation, and we were very positive that there would be value in revisiting the work, and also to involve Asthma UK as a first step. The Airways Group agreed to group the uncertainties, that those 250 research uncertainties that people affected by asthma had, into domains. So what did we actually do? We cut out 250 cards with all those uncertainties on them, and 4 of us spent a whole day grouping them together. We had many interesting discussions, and we really got a sense of people's concerns about asthma, which sometimes you don't get sat at a desk writing and editing reviews. Oh, I've gone to the end. Okay, there we go. So once we had grouped all of those questions into different domains, we stuck them onto bright bits of paper, which we now actually have sat on our office wall. And these always are there to remind us of the people that are affected by asthma, which is something you can sometimes forget when you're dealing with lots of figures and meta-analysis. Some of the areas that we picked out matched well with our existing topics list, for example, self-management and education, but some didn't. For example, adverse effects of drugs we grouped together So we grouped steroids together with long-acting beta agonists, and we grouped those together, and people were more concerned about the adverse effects of the whole group of drugs, whereas when we're writing our reviews, we tend to think of the drugs first and the side effects second. So that was an interesting way of seeing things for us. Here you can take a closer look, although you can't really make the words out too well on this slide, unfortunately, today. But the self-education and self-management group in particular surprised us. We know adherence to daily steroid inhalers is a problem, but we hear about this from a clinician's or trialist point of view, not from the parents. So it was great to hear those concerns being shared with people affected by asthma, as well as their doctors. So here you can see the different groups, the various groups we came up with. So next, we had a second fantastic meeting with Sally and Mark again, but also joined by Leanne Metcalf from Asthma UK. Two important action points came out. The first was the Airways Group would provide a list of all of our existing reviews mapped onto the indicative domains that we created in the initial work to Asthma UK. So we provided those to them last August. And we were also invited to join the Asthma UK prioritisation progress, and the James Lind Alliance offered to facilitate that. So that was really something quite positive that came out of the meeting. So it was quite a large piece of work to actually map those our reviews onto the domains and onto the specific clinical questions that came out of the prioritisation exercise. And I haven't got the time to really show you that today. But going back to the initial list of the top 10 uncertainties, the red areas indicate where we actually have reviews in those areas. So we do get a sense of the coverage against the priority set and partnership top 10. We passed these the spreadsheet with all of our reviews mapped onto the domains to Asthma UK, and they were used in their prioritisation work very effectively. So how has this helped the Cochrane Airways Group so far? Well, we've been able to make easy decisions on registering titles. 3 examples are vitamin D for asthma, potato breathing techniques for asthma, and yoga for asthma. We know that these are very important to patients, even though they might not be so important to NHS according to some other tools that we can talk about a little bit later. And we also have a clear indication of where to focus attention on reviews that are already in progress. So we have a registered title for cognitive behavioural therapy for asthma, which we're very keen to get that written. And we also have a review in the editorial process on weight loss interventions, and we know these are key questions for patients, so we can really focus our attention there during the editorial process. So at the actual prioritisation day that we were invited to at Asthma UK, some really great things came out. We recruited 2 consumers, including one, a mother of a child with asthma who's an health economist, and they've joined our consumer panel, and that's really helpful for commenting on reviews and plain language summaries, and also possibly to join a focus group for more detailed prioritisation later. We met several of our authors at the day, and we have achieved some general learning to find out that Asthma UK have funded reviews in the past, and that they'd be delighted to do so in the future if we could put together some teams and priority topics. This spreadsheet has also been used to recategorise our reviews for display on the asthma portal on the Cochrane Summaries website. So what are the next steps? So our next steps are to assess our scope against uncertainties and to identify gaps for new reviews. This is quite a challenge with 81 asthma reviews, and some of the uncertainties are very broad. But we're not only concerned with asthma within our group, we also have many disease areas, including COPD, where we have around 60 reviews. So questions we're currently grappling with are, do we work on our entire scope together, or just asthma, to start off with? So at the moment, we're using our top cited and our most downloaded reviews to inform prioritisation. And we're starting to use the NHS prioritisation tool and the updating decision tool, which was discussed by Rachel Marshall and Sally Hopewell in last week's seminar. And we hope to put together a focus group to refine our ideas and then to prioritise. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Erin to see if any of you have any questions. And while we're waiting to do that, you can have a look at, this is a view from our window in Tianjing, so this is London, and the little arrows there is pointing to the Shard, which is the exciting building project we watch every day. So back over to Erin.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Can I get a round of applause from everybody on today's call to thank Emma for that presentation she's given us. And we'll give just a moment for people to type in any questions or comments that they may have about Emma's presentation. We do only have a few minutes left, but the presenters will be staying on for an extra couple of minutes. So if you do have any questions about any of the other sessions, please do feel free to ask those at this time as well. We'll just give a moment to see if there are any other questions coming through. And while we wait for those questions, I'm going to move forward and put up a website on which we're now doing our evaluations. We're testing doing our evaluations online instead of doing them via PDF form. And we hope this is going to work better. So you'll find the link there on the screen. And it would really help us if you could take a few minutes to complete an evaluation form for us, to let us know which speakers we should have back, what tools to use, which formats to change, and so forth. So if you could take a moment to please go to that link, and if you could please complete that form online, we'll also be circulating it after today's session. So we'll give just a moment to see if there are any other questions coming through, questions for Emma or questions for any of the other presenters. Please feel free to send those through at this time. And if there aren't any questions, I'm going to send a happy face through to say that I really enjoyed today's session, and I really appreciated the time that our presenters took to talk to us about priority setting and different methods and tips that they've been using in their review groups. I will send that link through into the chat room. I see a question just come through there, so just a moment, and I'm typing that through. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Evaluation. There we go, and that's coming through to the room there. You'll find the link there so that you can copy it. The evaluation form is online. Thank you very much, Jay, for that suggestion. And I see a couple more people typing through some responses. Chiprian's asked, when are the recordings going to be posted? Chiprian, they take about 2 weeks or so. They're very kindly done for us by Louis Gabriel at PAHO. So depending on what else he has on his plate, by the end of the month, I think would be reasonable. You can find those links off the Canadian Cochrane Centre's webpage. I'm about to send that through in the chat room again, just for anybody who wants to look up those recordings. You'll find a link there in the chat room. Thank you so much. And I see that Sally's written in a question for Emma. Sally asks, Emma, is there any feedback on the downloads of the summary thus far? Emma, could you answer Sally?
Thanks for that question, Sally. I'm actually not sure. I'm afraid I can't give you an answer to that, but that would be a good question, and I can raise it to the appropriate person. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Sally. So if there are no further questions, we're going to say thank you so much to everybody for taking the time to come today. And thank you very much for completing that evaluation form. Again, we do really appreciate you taking the time to do that. So thank you very much to our presenters. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to present and to put together your slides and to prepare that for us. The evaluations will be summarized and will be distributed. We'll be closing the session in just a few moments, so please go to File and Exit. And I really appreciate that. Thank you.